Chapter 17. The Seventh Ring. Inanna's foot slipped off the trunk of a massive fallen pine bridging the creek below, a drop some 30 meters. Osiris lunged just in time, catching her arm before she tumbled into the ravine. "Watch your footing, Nin," he warned, pulling her to stable ground. "Everything in this land wants you to fail." With a secure grip, he steadied her on the trunk until she found herself stable. The remaining party of 30 travellers had trudged through the ice for what felt like an eternity. They cautiously made their way across the precarious pine, one at a time, before pressing onward. Thick forest had sheltered them for weeks, but now the trees began to thin, giving way to rolling fields and scattered scrub dusted by snow and frost. Day by day, Horus drilled Inanna in combat. Though slow to master the basics at first, she'd made remarkable progress. Nearby, Enkidu studied a map that Palios unfurled. Both men were pointing and murmuring. Spotting them, Inanna pushed closer. "We left the ruins of Dilmun weeks ago," Enkidu explained. "We've crossed these ancient forests since. Hard to gauge our exact location, but we're skirting the edge of dense woodland now. Gornya Shuria should lie 2 days farther north. It's new territory even for me." From his satchel, Palios retrieved a small circular instrument resembling a compass. "Let me check our coordinates." Enkidu eyed it curiously. "A device for navigation?" "Yes," Palios said, carefully adjusting the dial. "It measures distances from major epicenters, like the Amazonian pyramids, Giza, and China. Each site houses refined obsidian aligned with the Earth's axis. This instrument tells me within meters how far I stand from each location." Enkidu's awe was apparent. Incredible how humankind can accomplish so much through cooperation. Palios nodded. "When we work together, any obstacle is conquerable. That's why crossing the ice is so critical. Our harmony is under threat, and we must protect it." He recorded 3 sets of numbers from the device, transferring them to the map. "We're here," he concluded, tapping a spot. Enkidu peered closer. "I fear the terrain ahead may be more treacherous than the forest. Neanderthal territory." As if on cue, a thunderous roar echoed through the ravine. Muffled by drifting snow, faint, human-like cries mingled with bestial calls somewhere in the distance. "What was that?" Inanna asked, instinctively tightening her grip on her sword. "Mammoths," Enkidu answered grimly. A flurry of answering roars followed, unsettling in their urgency. "They're in distress," Enkidu added. "We should leave. Whatever's happening, it's dangerous." Inanna looked at Isis, who stood alert. "Go with Horus. See what's out there." Silently, Isis and Horus ascended a snowy slope, drifting from sight. Osiris approached Inanna. "We should heed Enkidu, Nin. If Neanderthals are involved, better to avoid a fight until we reach Gornya Shuria." But Inanna's face was set. "My family's sigil is the elephant. These mammoths are kin to elephants, and their cries tear at me. I won't continue hearing their pleas for help and do nothing." Their followers braced for possible conflict, positioning their weapons at the ready. Isis and Horus crept up the slope, while the rest stood poised below. Enkidu readied his bow, keeping his posture tense. From the slope's crest, Isis and Horus scanned the valley. The wails of mammoths grew sharper, and in the distance, they saw a herd thundering across the snow, pursued by Neanderthals giving barbaric shouts. Horus and Isis pressed low, hoping to remain unseen. Below, Palios watched them through a scope. Inanna hovered at his shoulder. "What do you see?" He lowered the lens. "Isis is signalling." Osiris took over, interpreting the quick hand gestures. "They're heading this way." "Who? The mammoths or the Neanderthals?" Palios pressed. "She only says, 'They're coming.' Enkidu's brow knitted. We need to hide. But Inanna was resolute. Spread out, prepare to ambush the Neanderthals once they show. Strike on Osiris's order. Her retinue swiftly took positions behind trees and boulders. Peleos crouched by a jagged rock while Inanna kept low beside him. Nearby, Horus and Isis melted into the undergrowth. Soon, the stomping and guttural cries drew close. At last, a mammoth lunged over the snowy rise, trumpeting in terror. Inanna's eyes widened. She'd never seen such a creature. The ground tremored under its colossal weight, shaking snow from nearby pines. One after another, the mammoths charged over the slope, racing past Horus and Isis. Peleos counted hastily. Roughly 30, he murmured to Inanna and Osiris. Inanna peered over the rock in awe. The final mammoth cleared the ridge, and the snow-shrouded ground stilled, until a group of Neanderthals appeared in relentless pursuit, shouting war cries in a language unknown to the travellers. Another 5 flanked the herd from the left, then another cluster from the right, working to box in the panicked animals. Raising compound bows, the Neanderthals fired volley after volley of arrows, each tip bloomed into bright flares of fire and phosphorus high in the air. The mammoths skidded to a halt, bellowing and trampling one another in fear and confusion. Isolated animals were swiftly entangled in nets. The hunters shouted commands. One mammoth managed to fight back, smashing a Neanderthal underfoot in its desperation, but it, too, was soon caught. Inanna's chest tightened at the sight. "Signal our troops," she told Peleos. "They're too preoccupied to notice us. Let's move." Peleos and Osiris unsheathed their blades, relaying Inanna's instructions in hushed tones. The soldiers advanced silently, flanking the unsuspecting Neanderthals, focused on subduing mammoths. Osiris led the charge. Peleos impaled the first Neanderthal he reached, plunging a sword through their torso. At his side, Inanna drew her blade, cutting into an unsuspecting hunter. Witnessing its fellow hunters fall, a third Neanderthal was swiftly slain by Osiris's sword. The remaining 2 of that cluster released their hold on the mammoth's tether and drew arms. Before they could mount a defense, Inanna's soldiers were upon them, cutting them down with brutal efficiency. One of the Neanderthals cried out a desperate, warning wail to the rest of his clan, only to be silenced a heartbeat later. Not far away, the other Neanderthals heard the dying cry and broke off, subduing their captured mammoths. Roaring in anger, they turned to confront the ambush. Enraged and disorganized, they rushed across the snowy field with their weapons raised. Inanna's troops charged to meet them. Swords and spears glinted beneath the grey sky. The Neanderthals attempted to reform, trying to push forward in a single surge. In the initial confusion, several of the unbound mammoths scattered, seizing the chance to flee. Others, partially trapped, bellowed in panic. Spotting a group of hunters restraining a tethered mammoth, Inanna turned to Osiris. "Help me free it! This way!" Osiris nodded and led 3 soldiers aside to follow her. Peleos, meanwhile, commanded the remaining fighters in the main clash, pressing the Neanderthals with relentless momentum. From the rear, Isis and Horus crept closer. Their footsteps were muffled by thick snow. Skillfully using the agitated mammoths as moving cover, they skirted the perimeter of the skirmish. Together, they struck from behind, cutting down the Neanderthals facing their comrades before being detected. At the heart of the fray, Inanna wove through the snowy field. She and Osiris, with their handful of soldiers, engaged the small knot of hunters, determined on holding down a terrified mammoth. One of her men fell beneath a Neanderthal's axe, his blood spattering across Inanna's cheek. In fury, she hacked into the killer, only to be knocked back by another foe. He raised a heavy club overhead, preparing to crush her. Scrambling, Inanna dodged the blow, instead it slammed into the bound mammoth's flank. the Neanderthal swung again, narrowly grazing Inanna's armor. She dove into the snow. Her senses screamed for help, but every ally was tangled in their own life or death struggle. With a roar, the Neanderthal lifted his club for a final strike. Before it could fall, a passing mammoth thundered by, trampling him into the snow with a sickening crunch. Inanna felt the ground quake beneath her as the massive beast continued on. The mammoth halted soon after, turning toward its bound companion. As Inanna regained her feet, she approached carefully, mindful not to startle the massive creature. Drawing her dagger, she slashed at the ropes pinning the second mammoth. One by one, the binds snapped. At last, the mammoth burst free, roaring its relief. The unbound mammoth and its now liberated companion shared a brief, mournful glance at the chaos around them, then charged back into the fray, desperate to aid any of their remaining family members still trapped. Across the field, Palios led the bulk of Inanna's forces, driving the Neanderthal hunters to an open area. Amid the fierce fighting, Enkidu advanced beside Palios, bow in hand. A hulking Neanderthal rushed them, shouting in the harsh tongue of the north. The words were unintelligible to most, but Enkidu caught the meaning. Accusations of betrayal, a promise of torment. Before the brute could reach him, a soldier's sword ended the threat. Though spared, Enkidu bore a fresh weight of sorrow, reminded again of how he stood between two worlds. The battle reached its crescendo as more mammoths, free or newly released, stampeded the final Neanderthals. Their massive trunks whipped out, flinging hunters aside. Their colossal bodies crushed those who stood rigidly against them. Inanna watched in awe, seeing these creatures defend their own with wild strength, unwitting allies in this fight. She caught a fleeting thought of her grandmother's sigil, the elephant, and wondered if fate had led them here to uphold that bond. At last, the final Neanderthal fell, leaving a quietness to descend on the snowy plain. Inanna's soldiers exchanged exhausted glances, and the faint howls of the wind replaced the din of battle. Though no cheers arose, they were still deep in hostile territory, yet a collective exhalation of relief followed. Stepping among the injured and the dead, Inanna joined Palios, Isis, Horus, and Osiris in the centre of the field. Everywhere, bodies of Neanderthals and some of her own troops lay crumpled and blood-stained. Isis knelt by a wounded soldier, applying what salves she had to stem the bleeding. In the distance, a few men carefully cut nets from captive mammoths, allowing the surviving creatures to stand free. Palios approached, nodding grimly. We lost 10 of our own. By our tally, we killed over 35 Neanderthals. Inanna's jaw tightened. We are down to 20, then. She paused, accepting the numbers with a heavy heart. A steep cost just to reach Gornya Shoria. It is, Palios said gently. But everyone who joined you understood the risks. This is the price we pay for protecting the world we share. She surveyed her battered soldiers, some tending to the wounded, others solemnly gathering weapons from fallen comrades. A wave of guilt and renewed resolve swelled in her. Among the dead lay a few mammoths, their vast forms now still upon the bloodied snow, while the survivors huddled over their fallen kin. Faint, trumpeting sounds of grief carried on the wind. Mammoths were known to be among the most intelligent species to roam the earth, revering their dead in months-long rituals that correlated with lunar phases and hidden forms of communication. Inanna saw a glimpse of this now. A great mammoth bowed its head toward a wounded companion, gently resting its massive forehead against the others. Inanna felt her heart slow from its frantic pace, as if touched by some profound resonance. It was like watching a language unspoken yet deeply felt, a frequency of pure empathy passing between them. The wounded mammoth gave a final shuddering breath. Its companion lifted its trunk in lament, then let the dying creature rest. The silence of that moment settled heavily over Inanna. At length, she turned and trudged back to her comrades, stepping past fallen bodies, her own soldiers and Neanderthals alike. She offered words of thanks and consolation to the survivors, knowing the heartbreak on each face was genuine. In the aftermath, only 20 of them remained. Inanna, Pelios, Enkidu, the Egyptian Brotherhood members, Isis, Horus, and Osiris, and a dwindling cadre of loyal warriors. Those left were exhausted, rattled by the carnage, and newly aware of just how deadly the road ahead might be.